What's up, YouTube? Sorry for the little bit of a late start. Getting settled into a new place, so got new setup and everything. Got a nice colorful light back there. Still unpacking boxes, so a little bit busy, but excited to be able to dive in tonight to do a director's commentary on New Frontiers. So I'll be going through, I'll be pausing here and there. There might be sections like, in different credits or whatnot that I might jump over it a little bit quicker, just to get through the whole thing a little bit faster. We won't watch through the credits every single time. I'll kind of touch on things a bit to begin with, but then we'll start, rifling through it. But I did want to get to, there were a couple of comments that came through that I just wanted to answer from a community post that I had made. So in that post, I was kind of mentioning that from coming out of New Frontiers, there's going to be a bit more content coming out, and there's some people asking about that. A new video is coming out tomorrow to announce that and kind of show what the future of the channel is going to be. So stay tuned for that. But in addition, if you're getting around here, you might notice that the channel looks a little bit different. We rebranded some stuff just so we can do more projects in the future. But in addition, we also started up YouTube memberships and whatnot. So if you want to support the channel, get more exclusive insights, you can become a member and become part of the fun. Let's see what other questions we got from that chat. A lot of people were just really excited, and some people were they're sad to see New Frontiers go, but it did what it came to do. Was not expecting what happened to happen as far as like the amount of traction it got, but we want to be able to do other things, and we've already got stuff in the works, which will be announced tomorrow, so definitely stay tuned for that. But it's gonna be super exciting. I'm very excited. We have a shoot coming up soon that'll kind of take everything we learned from New Frontiers and put it into something new. We've got backing for the project as far as like a sponsor and stuff. It's pretty exciting. I've been trying to figure it out, but I can't. What is the loadout of each character in the show? I mean, they vary character to character, so that's something we might talk about a little bit in the director's commentary. Emma's 3111 asks, I have a few questions. What is the hardest thing to do throughout the making? What were your expectations like going into the project? And what made you choose the tone and themes of the show, making it darker than some expected? So I'll touch on that a little bit as I go through the director's commentary. But I would say probably one of the hardest things was the animation itself, but also just keeping everything organized and synced. Because for all these scenes, like the entire thing had to be synced up and working for all of it, like for a long time. It wasn't until I was actually able to do the video editing that it was a lot more precise. What were my expectations going in? Didn't really have any. I had 70 subscribers when this all started, and now I have over 10,000, so pretty crazy. But thank you for subscribing and being a part of it. And what made me choose the tone? A lot of people thought that this was going to be a lot more like red versus blue. It's not. It's a bit darker in tone, a more serious story. It is just, we had an opportunity to tell something unique, so that made it super, super exciting. There will be more Titanfall 2 related series. Not necessarily. Might do some more Titanfall stuff in the future, but there's nothing on the docket. Do you like Ultra Kill? I haven't gotten around to it yet, but I am going to be getting into Helldivers, so that'll be fun. Will you ever accept character ideas from fans for future projects? Yes, potentially. Actually, if you want to come join and be a part of things, you can join our Discord server, which there's a link in the description of the live, I believe. But there's also a link in the description of the video that's coming out tomorrow. Essentially, you can jump in there and potentially be a part of future projects. There's like a form there right now that you can fill out for our next project, which is already starting production. But if you're interested in being part of future projects, go ahead and fill out that form anyways. And I'll be able to, potentially get you in on some stuff. If you have character ideas, that could be cool to see about implementing as well. How tough was it to model and design custom helmets and Titans for New Frontiers? Can you give more detailed spotlight on it? I'll talk about that a little bit in the director's commentary. A lot of the models came directly from the game, but some of them, especially BT, were a huge pain to work with, just because they were built for a different engine. They're sourced from different places and all sorts of things. Just made it tough sometimes. I have a few questions, asks the dude from Bosnia. Did you have any previous experience with animating? Very little. What you've seen in the Titanfall stuff is like most of the experience that I've had. How did you find all these people to help out? I have been just in different production groups. I do video production full-time as my job. So I've met people over the years, and this is something very new that a lot of people wanted to get on board with. So I met people through that. Different people from Reddit wanted to help out. So all sorts of stuff. I mean, who is your favorite character that you created? Probably Gila, but I think it's also because she's like the closest character to who I am as a person as far as like age demographic and whatnot. Will you be hiring competent animators? Why did the Titans have zero weight to their movements? Because I've been animating for like 2 years, and most of that was in New Frontiers. So I'm still learning, trying to get better, and I learned a lot of things that I need to scale back for current projects, because New Frontiers was a huge undertaking. But we are going to kick it off from here. How can we support? I see somebody asking, become a YouTube member. So if you join, become a member. That's the best way to support. Also, you get extra perks and exclusive content, and we'll be putting more behind that. I'm also a YouTube paid partner now, but I disable the mid-roll ads for my videos because I don't think you should get stopped in the middle of what you're watching to get hit with an ad. So no mid-roll ads, but if you become a member, that is one way that would be a huge support. All right, we are going to dive right into the comments not the comments. We're going to dive into the commentary and get right into it. So here we go. Probably turn this down a hair. So I'll let the first one run through, and then we'll kind of start skipping through here. But yeah, it's crazy to see like all of this, especially because like I never really got a chance to like truly sit down and enjoy watching this until it premiered. We were just making so many final tweaks up until the last minute with the entire thing. It's a fan-made project, not affiliated with Respawn Entertainment or EA Games. So this whole thing, getting everybody's fan artwork and cosplays and stuff in this was super cool. I kept getting messages and comments on different things like how can people get involved. So having this be an option was just super great. I absolutely loved it. And you get to see a little bit of everybody's stuff. Hey, Plot Coalition, where's the Discord? I don't remember if I put it in the comments of the live, but it is in the comments of the new video. So if you go to the video that's going to post tomorrow, it's set up as a premiere. In the description of that, you can join the Discord. But another neat thing is we actually animated this whole thing live. I did it on live stream. It was like a 6-hour live stream where just went through and kind of showed behind the scenes what this all looks like, which this was like the very end of animation, which is why it looks a little bit more polished. There are some things that, you know, it's still kind of rough, but it's some of the more polished animation in the series, just because it was one, it doesn't have any voiceover or anything, but two, it's also just you know, a little bit more candid. Everybody loved the Davis and Draws stuff. If you didn't notice, their primary is other pilots, and their Titan is yours. All right, getting right into it. So for anybody who doesn't know, but I'm sure everybody knows now, this intro that's at the beginning here, that plays, is voiced by Evan Boymel, who originally voiced Viper in the game, which is super cool. He had reached out, he wanted to become a part of this, and so we found a way to get him involved, and it's really cool to see how the fans responded. And if you guys have any questions while we're watching, feel free to drop them in chat, and I'll see about addressing them when I'm not, you know, talking about what I'm seeing.
With its insatiable hunger for dominion, continues its ruthless assault on the colonies scattered about the edges of known space. The freedom that once defined the frontier, now...
One thing that we really wanted for this, and I know I'm kind of talking over Evan's voiceover, I might turn it down just a hair while I talk about it. But one of the neat things, like, I really want to make this reminiscent of Titanfall 1 because of the intro and that. It really just sets up the world well. And, like, just the way they did it. For the longest time, I wasn't sure how I was going to introduce the show. And when Evan reached out, like, that's when me and the writer Luke Ryan kind of brainstormed, like, how can we get him involved, but also set up the world and make it look like Titanfall 1 without being one-to-one, because theirs is kind of like a newscast, so a lot of this footage is from the Titanfall 1 intro, just different things that we either enhanced or changed, just to use in here to make it a little bit different. Unrelated to New Frontiers, but how do you feel about how many people are watching the stream right now? I don't care. It's a director's commentary. We're at the end of New Frontiers as a whole. There's a lot of things that I have planned for the future. So, you know, this is for the diehard fans. I want to be able to kind of do a nice send-off to the whole thing. Give, like, my final, you know, say about the series and what I learned from it before we get into the new stuff, because there's a lot of new stuff coming that we're cooking up that we want to be able to do. And, like, you know, a lot of people showed up for New Frontiers and then, you know, might have dipped. They showed up for New Frontiers, it came out, and then I changed the branding and they were like, wait, what's this channel? Who knows? But, you know, I'm not too worried about it. I do want to talk a little bit about this intro. So this intro music was written and produced by Deanna Del Toro, who did a fantastic job creating it. She spent many months creating the score for this. And Mariana, the vocalist, just did an amazing job performing it. But I did get a lot of questions about like how this intro was made, and I saw like, you know, different speculation online. So essentially, like the way this was done is it's all 3D animated. So like there are scenes with this setup, it like the color palettes, everything looks the same. And then I did like with beats of the music, I used a program called Stable Diffusion just to make a slightly different variant of each shot. And then I used EB Synth to allow it to essentially translate that up to a certain point, and then it would change, so it could change with beats of the music. And then I added like the cartoony effect to it in After Effects, just building some custom effects in After Effects to get the final look before bringing it into Premiere, and then doing the color grading and stuff to bring it the rest of the way. But if you haven't seen it in the behind the scenes, Deanna herself goes through like her whole process of creating the song. It's really cool. Question: did you finally see what the workshop collage is? Nope. Drop it in the chat. Sorry, I didn't see your comment. And if I'm going to do more Titanfall content, potentially in the future, but I want to shift my focus to some other things to build more awareness around the channel, because if I do another Titanfall thing, it's just going to fall flat. I'd rather do a Titanfall thing in a year or two that like is kind of a callback to this. Maybe I'll do it for Titanfall 2's 10-year anniversary. We'll see. But this is one of those. I'll turn this up a little bit. But I remember having the image in my head for that like the monarch kind of falling in the frame out of the dust and stuff. And when the text actually appears on screen, it's because the VFX kept glitching out and having render issues. So I was like, I'll cover it with text for now, because everything was trying to find a compromise, because there's so many VFX shots. I think the total was 576 of VFX shots for all of New Frontiers. So that's after it's been out of Unreal Engine and edited. Have the lyrics dropped? I don't believe so, but I think Deanna has it on her Spotify, if I remember correctly. But yeah, like all this, just like this whole intro, creating this, was really just like seeing it all and knowing that it was just a plan from the beginning is, you know, super neat. It's not like halfway through production where like, oh, what if we did something with Sarah Briggs in the beginning? Like, just the fact that it was all the way out there from day one, like some of this imagery, it's really cool to see it like actually playing out, and also knowing that like this was made with nobody in the same room. Like everybody was in different places. It's pretty crazy. Hey, thanks, best username. I appreciate that. It's so crazy. So like when we recorded this 2 years ago, I guess like a year and a half ago is when we did like the recording. But like with the technology that was available then, like it's come so far. Like the next project we do, we're going to be using MetaHuman Animator. And just like even looking at this, like it's serviceable. Like you know who's talking when they're talking, but like the fidelity definitely isn't there. And like I got a lot better at animating it by hand by episode 6. Like if you look at this now, and by the time we get to episode 6, you'll just see this astronomical leap in like how good I got at hand tweaking this. So being able to take MetaHuman Animator animations and hand tweaking that is just going to look so much better. So super exciting stuff. Oh, the one that's in the countdown of the stream, that song is on Tom Duffy's SoundCloud, I believe, which is also linked. Gotcha. That's what the warship collage is. I understand now, unknown waff. I am very happy with like the actors' performances in this scene. Like it just sets up the characters really well. And I wish I could have done better justice with the animation and like the fact that like there is technology now, because MetaHuman Animator didn't exist when we did this, and we wanted it to be accessible to everyone. So like, like everybody had a different phone, and like it varied, you know, actor to actor. But the fact that like everybody was able to participate just makes it really cool. This next project we're doing is going to be more contained. Like the actors will actually be in the mocap suit with like a phone recording their facial performance at the same time. But the fact that we were able to do this all over Discord calls still kind of blows me away. To Ashton asking if I play Apex. I do. My brother likes playing Apex, so I play with him quite a bit. It's also like, I wish there were like a way to watch this like on an IMAX screen, or like just in a good theater, because the quality of like the sound design and everything and a lot of the backgrounds, like if you get like a nice pair of headphones and like max it out, like Rodrigo Perez Signini did a fantastic job with this scene, for example, just adding so much tone and atmosphere to the ship. That gets a little bit buried when you watch it at a low volume, but like if you max it out, like you can feel it. It's super, super cool. I think the other crazy thing too, so like every time we did this scene, so like this scene for example, I did like 3 separate times. So like that's both me, like I recorded once in the motion capture suit, twice in the motion capture suit, and the third time for the other guy in the corner. There's actually 2 people in the corner, but I think I looped their animations. There's Edith. There's also such a like you can definitely see it like through the episodes, just where like I figured out like how do you animate these different titans and characters with like their own personalities, and kind of tweak the motion capture to it. That sound design got a little bit lost, but hey, it's all right. It's out. It's done. There's so much that was learned, even like in the final days of working on this. I remember this was one of the first scenes that we tested. Like mid recording, I just wanted to see like what does this look like, and I remember the first time I ran this back, it actually turned out like super bad because I had messed up retargeting some of the animation, and I'm glad I caught that earlier on because I was able to adjust my workflow, and like this turned out way more natural than the initial version of it. Hey, how's it goes it? It's at the Hinzers. The Hinzers has some of their own lines in New Frontiers. I can't remember exactly which scenes, but they are in there. I also just love like something that like not many people comment on, but like the environments you can create in Unreal Engine. Like when I created this, or like when I wrote it down, like this is what I wanted it to look like in my head, and so the fact that it looks like this in Unreal, like just the environment, is so cool. Like the ocean looks amazing, the sky looks amazing, the grass, like the textures on their armor, just the way it's lit. So even when the animation isn't 100%, there's so many other things that like, I'm looking at and thinking about, and it's not like I don't see the jank, but I don't see a point in commenting on it. Especially when, once again, just the way we went about this was insane that we made this over Discord calls. So none of these actors were ever in the same room. Actually, something interesting, Manfield, Edith, Manfield and Edith specifically, their voice actors didn't record with other actors. That way they could have more of a monotone, emotionless response to different things. Also, Kay Boone and Cindy Maples just did such an amazing job taking on like such big roles for this. They did absolutely amazing. And Kay, for example, like she was just recording in her closet in her apartment for the entire thing, like across the country. But the fact that like she was able to participate and like we were able to show her talent was just super dope. This whole simulation power down thing, I'm a lot happier with how it turned out than how I thought it might end up in my head. It turned out quite a bit better. Still not perfect, but it turned out better. I do love stuff like this, where they're talking with their helmets on. Like it just regrounds you, like even if the animation is throwing you off, like something like this just regrounds you in, the fact that like these are characters and you kind of forget about all that. And all the little sounds, like the sound of the floor and stuff. Just all helps. So one of the things, and this is something that a few people mention, is like some of the characters feel super stiff. It's actually because so like this model, originally it was working in our tests, all our tests. Pyre's model is this, so like without like the sash or anything, like it was working, and that's what we used for the test animations, and it looked great. And then for whatever reason, just in production, I don't know if it was a weird import error or what, but the neck just started going absolute whack. Hey, Dragon Actual, welcome. I'm pretty sure your art was on screen a little bit earlier. Dragon Actual had some pretty dope fan art as a part of New Frontiers. But yeah, that's why his neck like doesn't move. It's like stiff this whole time, which I was not happy with, but I was having problems with the other model too that I was eventually able to fix. That's why later in the series he only has that other model. But yeah, there are so many things that just happen as the nature of doing something this technical. A fun fact though, when it shows up the screen, Jack Briggs and Sarah Cooper, those are just, if you go to metahumancreator.com or whatever it is, and make your own metahuman, that's just the default animation, because it was way easier just to screen cap that and VFX that screen capture in than like trying to go and do a whole separate animation, because there's already hours and hours of animation in this. I think we estimated about 15 hours of motion capture alone, and then many thousands just animating it after that. I also love Roger's voice. Like, he has just such a deep, thick voice. It's also cool too because like I was able to cast him, which like Selisa's voice actor is a little bit closer to her actual age, but Roger's a lot younger than what Pyres is supposed to be. Because of this digital production, they're able to act on that same playing field, and that's why she kind of has this. There's almost like the superiority that she has. It is because the actor is actually physically a bit older than Roger was. Cindy is a little bit older than Roger. Now, I will say, I talk about how nobody was in the same room and that like everything was virtual. These two actors, Lila Corklow and Chris Corklow, they were the only people that were in the same room together because they're father and daughter in real life. So they like set up, but they couldn't act like towards each other. They had to act in front of their phones. So they kind of went side by side and recorded like that, which is a neat little tidbit. But I think it really added to these scenes just to make you connect with Gila's character even more when you're watching her younger self.
I don't really want to be here myself. I've got my own kids at home.
Where's your home?
Angel City. It's a long ways from here.
I heard that place in school.
Nice place.
They're both such good actors.
You know why we're here?
But I'd love to do like,
They say you're going
another project in the future where we're able to give a lot of these actors just more opportunity to like be in an even higher quality project, because like I'm really happy with how this turned out, but there are so many things that we can now do better just because of technology and my skill set after working on this. But one thing that was funny working on this scene specifically, I remember the cinematographer John Abrahams, who worked on this scene, like spent so much time, like when he realized how much freedom you had in Unreal Engine, like setting up lights to get like different reflections and painting puddles on the ground. I think that was his favorite thing, was just the fact that you could paint a puddle anywhere. So he had so much fun doing that. It was both humorous and like just super cool to watch him get super creative with it and inspire a lot of these shots. Especially these like final environmental shots just look absolutely incredible in Unreal.
No promise.
Like, look at those leaves. Those look insane in real time in a game engine.
Nice to meet you, Kira. I'm Nadine.
If I ever thought about making a game, not necessarily making a game, I'm more interested in cinematics and stuff like that, which is a lot of the direction that the channel is going to go into after this. Also, Sergio's lighting on this scene just looks incredible. Even though it's so short, like his lighting and cinematography just shows so much. It's super cool. Yeah, I love stuff like this, just like the setup, pre them launching.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, this region just caused some lapses.
I do remember, like,
I'm ready.
I was working with Cassandra doing the lighting on this scene, and we had such a hard time, like, lighting such a large space, but also, like, making it feel, like, dark and moody. And you can see some noise and stuff, but it's alright. I love this shot. Coming down with the lens flare and stuff. That ended up looking really good. And it's like cutting through the clouds. I learned a bunch of hacks through like different commercial work that I've done to make clouds look convincing at like that speed. That I used a lot right there. And so something that I want to point out is like right here, So there was a whole bit where that eye was like animated to show even more emotion, and the Unreal project crashed and like deleted all that, but like I was out of time to work on this scene, and I ended up just kind of accepting it as is, and I wanted to go back and potentially clean it up later, and add that back in, but then the computer that this was all made on just completely died and lost all the Unreal projects. So there's a lot of animation that I would have gone back and cleaned up, like as a last minute effort, but just couldn't. But it's all right. This shot was in my head for the longest time. And that's what I love about like this kind of filmmaking, because like what people don't realize is when you like film things on set, there are so many variables that change. And like the fact that in here you can get it so close to what's in your head and then like tweak it, you know, from there is super cool. But you also have to have so many things in place. So like all the animation for this, like none of it's like made up later on. Like it's all stuff that we decided on, you know, back when we were doing motion capture, and like it had to be exactly that, with small tweaks to like the animation and stuff, but you know, otherwise like things had to be pretty exactly the way that we recorded them. That whole idea, like a pilot ripping off a Reaper's head, that's been in the back of my mind since I did the original concept trailer. Thank you, Andrea. And that's something we've been talking about. Like, you know, there are some janky animations, but there are so many different tools we can use now to make it better. I do remember watching the chat absolutely blow up right here, and like I watched some there were like some streamers who like reacted to it and stuff, and their reaction to the fact that we just off Sarah Briggs like at the end of episode 1. Yep, it happens. Alright, we'll go through the credits. We all know Davis and Draws are at the end. I do want to make a quick comment on that. So the whole Davis and Draws thing that happens here at the end, like, we came up with the idea to do these, I think in like late January of this year. So it was like a last minute thing that we were like, this would just add so much. And I was like, I'll only do it like if we can do it in like 2 days. So the actors did a phenomenal job just getting back into character a year later to do all of these like in one go. And then like I animated it all and like rendered it out and had it done in less than 2 days for every single episode. So, you know, I think it added a lot. Like everybody was a super fan of Davis and Draws. But all right. Let's close episode 1, kick off episode 2, and we'll watch through the intro to this one just so we can see everybody's fan art, since there are 2 sets of it. Hey, the show overall was a banger. Only one mocap suit was a huge challenge. Props to you, brother. Thank you, Emmanuel. Yeah, like, only having the single mocap suit, and like that's how you have to record every single character, is you have one mocap suit that you put on, and you have to redo every single scene over and over and over again. And like all the actors, like, they recorded over Discord, so like I'm trying to mimic their movements. Me and my brother-in-law did, and my wife, we did like all the motion capture for every single character across all these scenes, and you learn a lot about them. So like Tegan here, like, is super bouncy, so like I kind of figured out a good rhythm for her. Like Jack was like just studying so much of the animation from the game, to like understand how he would move. Like everybody just has something a little bit different to them. Or like Gaz here coming up, like because he has that cloak on him, I would take a blanket and roll it up, put it over my shoulders, so like it like restricted my head movement and like, you know, made me a little bulkier while recording. Just stuff like that just went a super long ways. We got really good at doing like the Titan animations towards the end, like for the mocap. But yeah, everybody has like a little bit of a different personality. Jumping in. Are they plans of making a season 2 of Titanfall New Frontiers, or have planned something else unrelated to Titanfall? Andrew, I got a video coming out tomorrow to talk about that. So, stay tuned. Stay tuned. It's all going to be announced tomorrow. But we are working on the next thing already. So, it's going to be good. Get through this. And after this, for the next episodes, we'll skip over all this just to get into the meat and potatoes. Should I change my background light? Here's Evan's voice again. Yeah, we'll change the background light. We'll try and change it each episode. So this scene, I want to talk a little bit about it because I'd released a 15-second clip of like Tegan doing all the takedowns at the end here. I'll add a little volume. I turned it down a little bit earlier during the credits. But yeah, just like being able to even get that little 15-second clip early on really showed a lot of like what was possible with this, which was super cool. But again, this is just another example of like all the actors just like, I don't even think most of the actors were together for this. I think Tegan, Juliet, and Gaz were all together. Jack recorded separate, and Beemore recorded separate. They're voice actors, just because different schedules lining up and whatnot. And then all the background voices were different too. Congrats on such an awesome series. The amount of passion we can see put into it, better than any billion-dollar studio. Get the animation down and you're golden. Cesar Perez, that is what we're hoping to do next. So that's super exciting. Yeah, even stuff like this, like, you know, that is like just me like jumping up onto a couch and like doing that and like pretending to like trying to get a grip on it, and then like I have to do another animation of like struggling, and then you just kind of attach the two. It's a lot of paying attention to stuff like that. I'm going to skip over the intro since we already talked about it, but this is a good moment. If you are not a member of the YouTube channel, go ahead and become a member. You can help support the channel, support future projects, so we can do more of this. Not New Frontiers specifically, but just more projects, create more content. Even if Respawn are much, much bigger than you. Oh, wait. Why sometimes Apex Legends stories from the Outlands are sometimes worse than Titanfall New Frontiers? I don't know. I like stories from the Outlands, but I know not everybody does. Yeah, just different things. We'll go over to here. Again, this was so many moving parts. We had to have like so much taped off when we were recording this because the mocap for this scene, there were so many props and things to interact with. So like each time we recorded, I would start in the same place and we'd tape off different things just to try and make sure that it kind of lined up. But like, there's so much that goes into just making a scene like this, because like she's in the closet, so she needs to kind of be in like a certain box, and like him, you know, hitting there, like, or like even like punching him and grabbing him and throwing him and stuff. Like all that has to be planned. Same thing with right here when it falls on top of him. Like all that needs to kind of meticulously be planned out. But I like a scene like this just because, like, it can hide some of that janky animation. Not entirely, but like it does help. And again, with like the new tools that are out there, we're just going to be able to do this like at such a higher degree now for future projects. This is my brother and my dad. They've always been in my home videos growing up, so they're in here. Another interesting transition. If you listen to that with like the volume turned all the way up, like there's like a thunder strike right there in the background too. Just like trying to pay attention to little things that can enhance it. But I know there's like been a lot of comments about like how much dialogue is like in this, and like why is there more dialogue and not more action, right? And like I do like understand the sentiment, but like early on I knew, because I love the game, I love playing Titanfall, but like the action you get in Titanfall, the game, like it doesn't, it's very hard to make something that's comparable to it. So like what are other ways we can flush out the world, and this being one of those, like, you know, just like telling stories and you know, showing these characters in a more interesting light. You know, it just gives us more to play around with, but it also gives the actors like opportunity to really delve into their performances. Because like Kay Boone, when she did this scene, I had heard it like so many ways in my head, but the way she performs it here, like I'd never anticipated in like the first time we ran through it. And like she showed what she had in mind for the character and how to play this. Like it was so different than what was stuck in my head that like I was just like blown away. It was like watching like a brand new scene. So like it's just super cool to like have that kind of collaboration where somebody can bring like completely different ideas, even though it's the same script. Just the way she performs the scene, it just works so well. And then Eric Oliveira did the cinematography on this scene, so like lingering on Edith and Manfield right here, like that was his idea and stuff. It's just, it all just plays so well when tons of people are collaborating at the same time. It is funny because here when Edith shows up, like when I recorded with Kay and Cindy for their parts, like I just read Edith's lines, but then like Sherry Lee, who voices Edith, all her stuff was added afterwards, and like it works really well. I'm really happy with how it turned out. Something interesting that I want to kind of touch on, like right here, like this shot with like the fire. So like when I still had access to those Unreal projects before the computer died, like I was able to get 3D camera movement data out of Unreal Engine, but after the crash I didn't have that anymore. So episodes 5 and 6 are 100% like tracked by hand for any VFX, so I wasn't able to pull in any camera data from Unreal Engine anymore, which was a huge pain, and it did cut down some of the VFX shots, but you know, it still holds up. The hand tracking does look decent.
That was in the year 2694.
I've never heard of a balloon that
I also love like shots like this in movies where it's like overexposed and then like it goes down to a normal exposure. And like this right here, this is a great example of like where story. I'm gonna pause it real quick. But like this shot right here, when I was working on with Eric Oliveira, so there was an entire animation of Edith reaching down and picking up Celise and putting her in the cockpit, and it closing, and like I spent so much time animating it, and then we were working on this, and like as cool as that animation was, it wasn't important to the story. And staying on Gila's face was more important. And so like, and even Eric, when he was doing the cinematography, was like, but I really want to show that. And I was like, I'll render both. We'll have both in there and see how it looks. And in the end, I was like, dude, we need to have it stay on her face. Like, I spent so much time animating that Celise getting picked up by Edith and put in the cockpit, but in the end, like, it just wasn't right for the story. This scene is just an amazing performance by Lila. And again, it's one of those, like, when I was writing it, I had a certain idea in my head. And it's really hard, like, from like a casting perspective, just trying to get somebody who like, you know, can capture these emotions when it's in a writing stage. And so the fact that like, you know, I hadn't worked with Lila before. I'd worked with Chris before, but Lila, she did like she was a part of the test that we did early on. And like just knowing that like, you know, there was an actor who was young but could actually pull off these scenes, like, was just incredible. And this scene is just, even when we recorded it and it was just on the cell phones, it's just so impactful. And it works really well. This right here was actually really hard to do because Unreal Engine wasn't really primed to do like what I'm having the Marvin do right now. It's very hard to get that to work, or at least it was in the older versions of Unreal Engine. But now that it definitely worked in this case, but like the scene crashed a bunch of times just because of this interface on his chest. Which is why when it switches to there, it just stays on the smiley face, because it switches to a whole new texture entirely. Have you had experience the HDD or SD failure before, considering the data is permanently lost if you didn't back up all important data before the failure? Yeah, that's what happened with all the Unreal projects on the other computer. It all just burnt out. I had backups of everything, but like to load up an Unreal project would have taken days. Just because of all the like assets that were also associated with those projects. So it is what it is. I love these shots of her eyes. Like there are certain times where we like just kind of had to show off like how good a metahuman looks.
My name's Bernice. We've got something for you to eat and we'll keep you safe, okay?
All right, we're getting to a part that everybody loved to point out, and I understand why. It's how goofy this walk cycle looks, which is one of those things where this came down to time. I really shoehorned in some extra time for that ending part just because like the end part of the scene wasn't working. But even just like setting this up to get them like walking across the field and stuff would have broken so many other things that would have taken so much time to fix that it was like, hey, after a couple seconds of the goofy walk, you get over it. But at the end, the walk looks fine. It's because it's using a different animation, and like I did go through the work to make that actually work as it is. But even like just a scene of like the characters walking here, like a lot more goes into it than what a lot of people might think. But that's why like the animation right here looks like totally fine. This scene, Jordan Anderson did an amazing job just making like this not spyglass character just so intimidating. Like his performance of it just works super well. And Ethan Nagel did the cinematography on this scene, and just like the mood of it, like it really plays into that like bad guy stereotype, but it's still like such beautiful lighting. It just looks really good. I'm really happy with how this all turned out between the voice acting, the cinematography. Like it looks so good. Even something like that, like doing like that push-pull zoom effect that like they do in like Lord of the Rings, even though the background is like so dark, you can still feel it, and it just works really well. There's so many things, like even like timing out a scene like this, like has its own difficulties. This scene was a pain because we got that real-time cloth in the background, and there was like I learned a lot more about like making real-time stuff look better, but like shots like that, like essentially the way that I did it is they're like rendered twice, once with the cloth simulation turned off and once with it on, just with different render settings. But I also love how this scene looks because it's one of the few scenes that take place like midday, with that harsh sunlight, and I think it really just amplifies the whole thing. Also, like, you know, you have like so like every time you see like a new scene, it's a new level in Unreal Engine, so it's a brand new set. So like this is just like where you can see the tree line, like it's just packed with trees, but behind that there's nothing. You can even see like a very tiny bit like into the distance there, like it's just going off into nothingness in the background. But like having stuff like the ship and the sky and stuff to anchor like where they are in the world, like really helps, you know, ground it all in something familiar. One of my favorite comments was Manfield, dox this kid for me. That made me crack up. She really pulled a sniper wolf. I'm just catching up on chat a little bit. Not too much going on. We got a small group in here tonight. Also, like, this was a scene that, like, so there was, like, a point in time while writing, it's like, do we keep, like, this Beam character around, like, a little bit more attached to her? And, like, it really came down to Mrs. Coalition. This scene gives me PTSD now. Which, by the way, Mrs. Coalition recorded the motion capture for Beam when she was 8 months pregnant. So that is real pregnant lady motion capture going on. But like early on, you know, like it was a question of like, do we keep this Beam character around for a little bit so you get a little bit more attached to her? but it really came down to like just making sure it was well performed and that the characters had chemistry. So Asia and Cindy worked really well together, and we wanted to make it convincing enough to where you think Beam is a character that might be in the story for a little bit, which obviously does not quite happen in a mortal way. But Asia did a really good job just like selling this character as like being, and like so many of the actors did, but like just selling their character as being, you know, deeper than like just being a side character. They put a lot into it, which worked so well. I feel like in the back here, that's just another model of Beam walking around, just in a different clothing. Also, a lot of people like to comment about the whole Monarch versus Vanguard thing. And we intentionally had it said by a civilian, but it is like because we omitted the Titanfall 2 multiplayer lore just because it didn't work with what Respawn has done with Apex lore. We essentially treated it as a Monarch is a base model of a Vanguard, and a Vanguard is a far more advanced version of a Monarch. But
Cooper was definitely here. I heard every word. You certainly have a way with people.
this is my other brother, so all of them are in the same episode. Here it comes. Yeah, like timing out something like this, like just takes a lot. You can see the finger clipping, his pinky's clipping there. But I'm also really so happy with how all this turned out, because like so much of the episode, like building up to this moment right here, like when it actually plays out, it works. And then like kind of showing like this more terrifying side of the Titans that like nobody sees coming up until like minutes before this. It's just really cool.
Stay back. Engaging hostiles.
Also, fun fact, this shot right here I had done, and it uses assets from ActionVFX, and I showed them that shot, one of my buddies that's over there, and they started passing around the company, and so they gave us access to essentially like whatever we needed to make the rest of this. So it was super cool of them to be involved. Let's move on to episode 3, which while I switch it over, if you're not a member yet, you can become one of the first members of the Black Coalition. It takes a couple minutes to set up. You get tons of cool perks and all sorts of fun jazz. Alright, let's skip over intro stuff. We'll bring it back just a hair. Yeah, something I want to talk about with this scene, like one, it's like, you know, this is an example when she uses goodness, excuse me, when she uses the gravity star here in a minute. Like that's an example of like writing in elements that like we can bring back later, because like a gravity star shows up at the end of the episode. to push things forward, but like, yeah, this is a creative way to introduce it. But one of the things I wanted to talk about with this scene is when Cassandra was doing the lighting on this scene, like there's so much that we put so much thought into, just like with the color of everything, since it was more of these like purple browns, but like, you know, and it was based off of what Demeter looks like in Titanfall 1. But even like in the windows, you can see in some of the windows in the background, like there's some windows back there that just have these little lights to make the background have more dimension. Lots of little stuff going on. Even the way that like Pyro's helmet is designed so that like his face is illuminated and draws attention to it. And like really just like this scene also just sets up all the way at the end when he comes back in his pilot armor. Like it sets all that up. And getting to see an older Edith as a Titanfall 1 Strider Titan is pretty rad. Skipping the intro feels like a sin. If you want to go watch it, go give the series more views. It's just a few extra minutes that, you know, we're already watching all of it, so cutting down what we can. Also adding, we'll jump to the next scene in just a second here. But adding like all these scenes before the intro plays was actually like a draft 3 or 4 of the script. I think it was draft 3. Where like, because we were like, wait a second, we're making a show, like it's not a movie. So like we can have these little detached scenes that really just show things off well. And it worked incredibly. But as we get into this next scene, so this is, we'll get right over to it. But so this scene, a lot of people commented on the facial animation, and it's because this is the only scene that uses MetaHuman Animator. It wasn't using the actors' facial performances, which is a bit of a bummer. It was me studying what the actor did and doing that with MetaHuman Animator just to get it as close as possible. So I was like trying to study their mannerisms and make it as close as possible. But so when we did this, like the original facial motion capture was just like completely jacked up, and I was like, this is all like just their faces, and like, you know, there was no recovering it, and they had just like, I think MetaHuman Animator had been out for like 4 days. And I was like, you know what, it's the only scene that can do it because it needs to be in a new version of Unreal Engine. And so I completely reset up the scene, reanimated it, everything in Unreal Engine 5.2, and used MetaHuman Animator to do these facial animations. And I think it ultimately benefited in the long run, even though it doesn't look perfect, and 90% of that it's because it's me mimicking what the actors are doing. Like watch. Like it's just me doing these faces, like as one-to-one as I can. But I think it helped the rest of the series. Like people turn off that part of their brain to be like, oh, jank, you know. So like from here on, and like especially because I got way better at doing the facial animation cleanup by hand. After this point, like I think it really helped a lot in the future of things. But like the chemistry that the actors had in the scene was just so good that like trying to make them constrained to like, all right, don't move at all, just be in front of your phone, like it wouldn't have worked. But they just had such good chemistry. But like they're looking all around, and like their face tracking gets off and all sorts of stuff. So using MetaHuman Animator was the way to go on this scene. And like I would say this is a bad example of MetaHuman Animator just because it's my face doing all of it. Oh, Ashton, have a good night, dude. Yeah, definitely join the Discord tomorrow. The video drops at, I think it drops at 6 p.m. Eastern. But yeah, tomorrow night, new video drops. Kind of announces what's happening and going on. It's gonna be super dope, super rad. Also, I'm low key disappointed because only one person pointed out that the Marvin in the scene has a bow tie. So if you're watching, he's got a little bow tie on his chest. And that was just a little detail that I edited. And there's tons of little details like that throughout the whole thing. But I thought it was adorable. See, right there, he's got it.
No. We don't need to.
Could you please go ahead and snap a photo of us?
Now this.
I'm pretty sure it's breaking protocol.
Don't tell anyone.
And then dead people. But that's another thing too, is like you have to make scenes like that. Like you have to show the chemistry. You have to make it really long just to like make people forget that like this is the reality that like they're now living in. Like, you know, like you show like all these nice things and show that these people have such a past, to then be like, oh, but like those same characters caused this massive conflict that like ruins their relationships.
Does it not bother you that nearly 200 civilians just died without cause?
There are people everywhere, no matter what nation, what community.
Another thing that's interesting, so like because we used Adobe Speech Enhance and Descript to make the voices sound more like they were recorded in a studio. Something that was interesting was there's a few times throughout the series, but like this is probably the biggest one. Kay's delivery of these lines when she goes into like the backstory. It wasn't until I was editing this and I was like, oh wait, like this isn't working as well. So I reached out to Kay and I was like, hey, would you mind like recording this new script of dialogue to drop in? And she was totally down. She knocked it out for me, and I brought it back in, and like being able to do that and then run all the lines through Adobe Speech Enhance and Descript and then put it in the voice modulation for the helmet, like you can't even tell that she recorded like that entire section almost a year later. It's pretty crazy.
You don't know that. What about these people?
I lived this. One night, there was this.
So this right there when she says one night, it like that's her recording a year later, and like she hasn't even seen anything of this yet. So just like it transitions to audio she recorded on her phone a year later. That like just made the edit and the animation work a lot better. But yeah, so like all this was completely different. It was a bit more like I don't know. It wasn't great script writing. It was trying to explain too much. But like once I had like the actual imagery in front of me, I rewrote it and gave her something else, and she absolutely killed it.
When it happened, that soldier who was with us, he
Once again, Gila's mom's face is just my face. Just using the old method of live link in Unreal Engine.
I've only ever seen the IMC make just in
Sorry, I'm cracking all my fingers. Pop, pop, pop. I also love the way like the lighting on this worked out. Chandler Perry did the cinematography on this scene. and like it was about like just making sure that sun was like positioned in just the right place, peeking around the building, and like it through this whole scene, like this sequence, like the sun does slowly set. I also love these shots. It just adds so much scale to what's going on. I wish I could have added more like wind simulation, but again, when you're working on a project of this scale, you gotta sacrifice certain things. But yeah, like this whole thing, like using, gotta go make some nuggies. All right, Mrs. Coalition, love you. Like this imagery with like the horse kind of being like a Trojan horse. Do I want some chicken nuggets? I would take some chicken nuggets. Just make sure they're cooled off first. I would appreciate it though. But yeah, like sequences like this, once again, they're like great examples of like I had an idea in my head and seeing it play out. Like it's just so neat to see. And this shot coming up like right here, I just absolutely love the way this shot looks. And using Red Giant's real lens flare, like on the sun, it just like forcing you to look at it like one last time. Just turned out so good from a storytelling perspective. And then this bit, that's actually using a technique from old school Star Wars. The ship isn't moving, it's just the camera moving past the ship. With some shake and then adding the clouds and stuff. And there's a lot of that in New Frontiers, trying to like do things that were like, how would they have made a sci-fi in the 70s or 80s? And trying to keep those techniques in mind while working on it. I thought would be a lot of fun. So like stuff like that, I think just makes it, you know, a little bit more interesting. Gives some different things. Also, like another great example of like just finding different ways to inject more into the story. So like you'll see the lighting here that Jared Esteban did. On Pyres and Gila, they have like that green light hitting them from the sides, which like you're in a sci-fi spaceship, so like it makes sense. But then Solis is only getting hit by red light to kind of show like her anger and frustration. So like all that is stuff that we're thinking about and implementing into scenes like this. Really goes a long way to making the story come across even more. But yeah, see like zero green light is hitting her, and like we have that much control in Unreal Engine to make sure that it doesn't hit her at all or doesn't spill onto her. Also the delivery of this line and like this whole scene when he says that, like, looks like the past is somewhere you belong, and then like Kay or Gila tries to interject here. When we recorded with the actors, I remember there was so much tension and like it felt so awkward, and I was like, that was perfect. It worked so well. Once again, that's just the camera moving. Same here, like, you know, nothing's moving. It's just that adding that camera jitter, and like they're at such a height, and just making the clouds move past it a little bit quicker in the simulation. Just makes it feel like they are actually like, you know, in the air, and like having the actors yell like as if they were talking in a bar or over helicopters, like. It just really helped. I remember Kay mentioned like her neighbors came to check on her just because she was like yelling.
Let's go, Gila.
Solis, I know that decision wasn't ideal. Orders came down and we aren't in a position to negotiate.
And once again, like This is all done over Discord calls. Like this scene was re-recorded 3 times. So there was recording mocap for Pyres, recording mocap for Solis, and recording mocap for Kay. This shot was a little bit tricky because one take, like jumping out, but like it just adds so much more to the production overall. Again, this is another one of those images I had in my head, just like knowing that we had so much control. Like it's so hard to shoot a scene like this in real life with flashlights and stuff at night. And so like I wanted to do this where like they're like the flashlights on their helmets are like the main source of light. It just made things look so good. It also helps with the animation too.
Element of surprise.
Acting as the the aliens was a lot of fun. It's just like a lot of holding your arms back and doing that. Like even this scene had like a ton of tough animation things. And like right here you'll see like her gun wouldn't render properly. So like I added like some muzzle flashes to kind of sell it, but then like relied on the motion blur to hide like anything else.
Your projection was well executed. That last regen really did it for me. Now my projections have data from my movements. The more I execute, the better they can imitate me. Well, it's still
Also something that like, you know, once again doesn't get a ton of love, but it's one of those things that like I don't even think about half the time. But so the textures for Solis originally were like super low quality because they were for Titanfall 1, and the Titanfall 2 textures like look incredible. So there was a lot done to make Solis's textures look on par with the Titanfall 2 character model textures. But you know, it's not like 100% perfect, but it looks way better than it did in initial testing and stuff. But yeah, no, that went a long way. And then like using mega scans to make stuff like the cloth feel more realistic. And that's why when like the light's shining against her, like you see just like that differential of like the metal in her helmet versus the, you know, the cloth mesh.
If I trigger an event and the militia never leaves, you could be in a hairy situation. Not risking it.
Here comes, she's gonna say it.
Not calibrated. Effect and cause. Exactly.
Originally, the actor said cause and effect, and I was like, we gotta make it, it's gotta be effect and cause.
Easy to hide.
She was like, oh, no problem. She knocked it out.
Can you give me a moment to be alone?
Of course. I'll go secure the perimeter. I'm sorry.
And something like, even with an episode like this, like there's so much that's happening that's just setting up episode 4, and like this whole scene and spending so much time in here.
Sun will be up in a few hours.
Like if you watch episode 4 without like the context of episode 3, it would make the environment so hard to follow. But because we spend so much time like learning this environment, and like they talk about the environment, we look at different things in the environment, it sets up the action scenes in episode 4 to work so much better. That's something that like a lot of good action movies do, is like they spend time like showing you where the fight is going to take place, and so when it actually does, you have an understanding of the location. And that's what we're doing a lot in this scene, and then even in this next scene, like we're doing even more of that, of like, okay, now let's get more people in here and show the space. and like, illuminate it more, because now you're looking at it in broad daylight. What does it look like? Just to give as much context as possible, that when we spend all the time in this base in the next episode, there's a lot more going on. But this is another good example of like, there's like 40 characters in this, and each one of them needed their own mocap and stuff. So,
Our most precious resource is protecting the colony of the North. Pack your bags, men.
Justin Foster doing an amazing Jack Cooper. Arguably better than Matthew Mercer. Matthew Mercer does an amazing job too, though. That was another tough thing, like making the cloaked pilots look good. Here's like another example of jank that like, I promise everybody who wants to point out jank, I see more jank than you ever will. So like, for example, right here, there's another gun just rolling across the ground. So it happens. But yeah, trying to make the cloaked pilots like show up well on film was a little bit tricky, but Unreal allowed us to do some interesting things with it. Yeah, once again, like all this, there's so much going on. Just like trying to get the motion capture for it. There we go. There's that grab star we introduced in the beginning just to set all this up. And this was like an idea from one of the writers. Because originally at the end of this episode, like, Keela gets shot in the head. But then one of the writers was like, nah, we need to show that, like, she actually has the advantage before going into the next episode. And that's going to make, future cliffhangers hit even harder. And it totally does. Like, people were, like, going nuts on this cliffhanger. Let's keep it going. Episode 4. Sorry, intro. This is another example. This was a scene that we did early on. It wasn't the final animation, but just testing out, making sure that things actually were working and stuff. And then like all the animation was completely redone later to be a bit higher quality. But now the performances here are just incredible. Chelsea and Lila just did an incredible job, and like this is such a good example of like what made creating a project like this so unique was Chelsea. She has her parts, like her scene here, her scene in episode 2. I think that might be it, but like we had her in and out, did all her scenes in like less than 30 minutes. And like she just came into it prepared, got to know Lila a little bit over the Discord call, and then like we knocked it out, and like it took so little of her time, but her character adds so much to the story. Like that's just so cool.
Specifically aims to help people acclimating to our world. Through that program and with help from a friend I have over at Hammond Robotics.
Also, I just love the lighting on this scene.
There's no way.
Like so much of it works so well.
Can I try it?
It is yours after all. Here. It's still a prototype, so you'll need
Also, fun fact, young Gila here, she probably had the most difficult character model in the entire show. It was rough, but it worked in the end.
Like you would with your right hand.
Her head kept popping off for whatever reason.
Wow.
So sweet. Alright, we're getting to the next bit. The fold weapon scene. This one, I got a lot of comments and people reaching out to me. Just like the fact that there was the extra effort to not make this just gameplay footage. And we put a lot of time just like, how do we interpret it? Like, how do we make it sense for new audiences? Like, put a lot of time in trying to make this both one for one, but also kind of give our interpretive spin on it. So the fold weapon looks a little bit different. The facility obviously looks a bit different, but we're just trying to focus on like certain things. I have a solution. In an exposed state, my reactor core may be able to stabilize the arc at the center of the fold weapon. But yeah, like I remember I'd play through the game just trying to pay attention to what would I see if I wasn't in the first person cockpit. And that's what went into this scene. And just showing like these massive sci-fi shots is super cool. This shot took a long time, just like creating the UI and everything and making it as true to the game and hiding little Easter eggs. Same thing with this one. Like, I know it looks like it's just like a first person thing, so it must just be like a camera attached to the head, but trying to get it aligned with like what's in the game and how it feels and looks. We put a lot into that so that we can have this moment right here where we kind of show our interpretation of like how BT escaped, to help new audiences like get into the story more. Hey, thank you.
There's Chick-fil-A and ranch.
Oh snap.
And the Samsung.
Chick-fil-A sauce and ranch and chicken nuggets and a cookie. This is the same blink sequence that's at the end of Titanfall 2. It's just a little bit slower, just because different kind of moment. And then all of this, like, all these fight sequences throughout, just took so much coordination. And there are things that I wish we could have shown more of, like she was supposed to slide, like, the mag well down his arm and, like, twist the gun out. And I'm very used to, like, doing action sequences with people in real life. But doing it in the animation is just, like, a completely different ballgame. Completely different. So I got chicken nugs now. Also, I want to point out for this whole sequence, so like from the fold weapon scene and until Celeste gets brought out of the past, this is all music composed by Tom Duffy, who also did that intro music that everybody loves, where it's like the fan art. But it's like, I think it's like 11 minutes of just like straight, like his compositional piece that was custom made to work with this edit and go back and forth and just make it that much better, and like it flows so well. He did an incredible job with it. Even stuff like that, like that very tiny bit of animation. Oh, hold up, that went a little too far back. But the tiny little bit of animation of her like kicking and pulling the knife out, like that's all stuff that like I can kind of work out in motion capture, but so much of that has to be redone, like hand animated, to make it look good. And then like this stuff, just trying to make it look like it connects. The flashlight gives it a little bit of a unique perspective.
Let's keep your heels down, buddy. You good? Back in the fight. We've got company.
And then this bit through here. Sorry, I'm taking little breaks to chew a little bit. But this bit through here where Beam comes back. So it ended up helping a lot for a lot of the like bits later on. There were two things. One, her character model when she was pregnant was like impossible to work with. That one was also very rough. So I switched to this where she's like in essentially the same pilot uniform that Tegan wears, just to be like a little foreshadowing to that. But I was also trying to figure out like how do you show like somebody who you know has passed away, but like not do it like I didn't want her to be transparent or like anything like that. And that's where I came up with the idea of like, wait a second, we're working in like a fully digital space. Like, I can make her entirely black and white. It really helps with the eeriness, but also like later on with just the design of at the very end through the fight scene that like the whole series ends on. Just helps with that. And once again, like this is a great example of like just finding like how do you make characters invisible, but like also like the environment lighting is just built around making those characters stand out enough for audiences to tell where they are and like know that character is supposed to be invisible without making it too obvious. This scene had a lot of its own difficulties just because like there's so much compositing of fire, but it's a lot easier to composite fire when it's moving, but when it's frozen it's way more tricky. If I remember, I told Jared Esteban did the cinematography for this scene too. I remember telling him that I just wanted it to feel like beautifully horrific. Just something that's like really well shot. Something that would be like really nice looking, but then like just have it be like this horrible moment to make it that much more upsetting. Thanks, Team Spyglass. Talking about the cloak effect. Also, if you're not subscribed to Team Spyglass, go do that right now. Even if you have to hop off my stream, go subscribe to Team Spyglass, then you can come back. Also, that the baby she's holding, that's a real photo scan of my son when he was 2 weeks old. And there was one shot where I was like looking down at him, which that one shot is the only live action footage in the whole thing.
Salif, cover's here. We're under attack.
So this is another example of like just really trying to coordinate like complex choreography, which in my head, like I was applying everything that I knew about like doing things live action, but doing it in animation is just such a different ballgame. Which like I am happy with how this all turned out, but like it's just super complicated. trying to choreograph it and everything. And you have to keep in mind just so many different things. That effect ended up looking super cool. I'm really happy with how like the glitching looked. The hand, chopping off the hand. This sequence too, like when Jack like tackles her off the roof. Like I wasn't sure how that was gonna translate, but it ended up looking, you know, pretty decent. There were a lot of re-renders of new animations that were dropped in, but it looked a lot better than I was anticipating. So the electrical smoke was difficult too, just like finding like how do you do that in a non-video game way, like how do you translate it for film.
Requesting an immediate Titanfall 90 meters due northeast of our
This is one of my favorite shots right here. I love the way that this turned out. And like the sound design again, it's one of those, if you turn the sound design all the way up, like you can hear the atmosphere like separating. It sounds really cool. There are just lots of little things that we added because like the game already makes it feel so cool. So like how can we enhance it a little bit more?
Of course.
You are about to execute a full manual override. Would you like to proceed?
This is the
Are you certain?
another Easter egg to the game. This is like when you regenerate, like all the warning signals it puts up on screen.
Welcome back, Solis.
Like that's a nice little nod, and it's a good way to insert a joke into like, you know, what's otherwise been like a kind of heavy episode so far.
Sending you tracking data now. Let's move.
We're getting to the scene that people. The scene. Oh, what's up, Mavelyn Bell? Mavelyn Bell also has a great YouTube channel. They're just getting started out. I think they have like 100 subscribers. But if you are into like game commentary and stuff, they have a few videos out. Go subscribe to them. Show small YouTube community is where it's at, bruh. I love small YouTube community. But yeah, so this scene, Cassandra did the lighting on this, and Chandler did the cinematography for it. Rodrigo did the sound design for it. But like, it's so many elements coming together to make, you know, something interesting. And this was one of those. I had an idea in my head early on, to where like there would be a real camera, like attached to his eyeball to show on the screens behind him. And like it ended up working so well, and like you can even see it, like it's changing the lighting in the scene. Like being able to do this in Unreal Engine just completely changed everything. It allows you to get so much more creative to show this all in real time, and like, you know, in the background it doesn't look incredible just because of the way that Unreal has to process it, but it's still super cool. I love it. This scene turned out so good. Also, there were so many people that thought that Kara O'Brien, who voices Sarah Briggs in our show, they thought she was an AI voice because she sounds so much like Sarah Briggs. But nope, it's a real voice actor. She's just really good. But you can even see like in here, this is where I like, you know, was starting to really figure out like the whole hand animating, facial animation. And it's like, it's not perfect by any means, but it was getting a lot better than it was in episode 1. I remember people like loved this sequence too. Just the banter that Jack and BT have. They were like, it feels like real scripted dialogue from the game. And that's one of the things, like, I spent tons of time just playing the game, doing every single dialogue option, playing through it again and doing the opposite dialogue option just to figure out, like, you know, how do you write this true to what was there. And BT was voiced by two different people. He was voiced by Philip Rencher and Jordan Anderson. Jordan Anderson did a lot of the like while we were recording voiceover stuff. And Jordan is a Titanfall fan, and Justin, who voices Jack Cooper, is a Titanfall fan. And like they were coming up with different banter things that just made it work even more. So like this is just fans just geeking out over the characters, which is really cool. Once again, incredible environment shots brought to you by Unreal Engine 5. And you know, once again, every blade of grass like I painted down. Like none of this exists, which is like the crazy thing to me. It's all hollow. Like it's just pixels. None of it existed. It was an empty level when it started. And once again, same as in episode 3, showing all this, seeing the environment, it's setting up all of episode 5. Like it's all about like getting you used to this environment, like seeing it in a nice serene way, so that episode 5 doesn't feel confusing. But like even this shot is just setting up so much of what you're about to see. I love the way the animation turned out on this. Just like the walk with the sound design and everything. It ended up working really well. It was also really important to just show like this planet like as such a beautiful and serene place. I think it really added a lot to the story overall. But all right, that's episode 4. Let's see what happens to episode 5. I mean, if you're watching the director's commentary, I assume you've seen the show, but we will pop right into it. Jumping in the beginning here. Once again, this next scene, Cassandra spent a ton of time like getting the lighting just right for it, because there are so many things that we need to be mindful of, because none of the light exists. That's all crafted. All the light. Like sometimes like with the sun, you can get away with like just dropping the sun in there and making it work, but like something like this, like there's no sky or anything. Like all this light is artificially made. I mean, everything is artificially made. None of it's real. I really love the way that shot like just turned out, just with the light and everything.
You alright, kid?
I'm pretty sure Kay did like
Introduce yourself.
20 push-ups like right before we recorded like this dialogue bit. And I loved like like it wasn't written, and I could tell that she didn't mean to mess up that line. But I think it just added more to the vulnerability of Gila's character there, just by having her try to restate what she was trying to say. Just adds more to the scene. Also, like, this is a great example. Like, everybody's like schedules were like pretty tight. Like, we only had like so much time to record like every single thing. But like there was like super heavy traffic outside of Kay's place when we recorded this, and like because we're all over Discord, like we didn't even know necessarily, and like she was just like really into the acting bit of it. So like when the traffic picked up, like, you know, I didn't know until way later, and I was like, you know what, like the performance is there, the heart is there. It's gonna be hard to recreate that. So I was like, I'll clean it up on the back end. So that's why like there's a little bit of that weird sound. It's mostly just denoising it, trying to get it to a different place. But once again, for recording over Discord, it's pretty decent. Blown up. So another thing, I'm gonna kind of touch on the writing for a little bit in this next bit. So like we spent a ton of time, like this whole scene, like each stage got a lot of time and attention, just to flesh out like how much was gonna go, like how do you get the characters to these different places and showcases, because it does get into a very heavy topic, of like, you know, obviously it's wrong to kill these kids, but like you have to make Gila's character justified in her beliefs, and that's what so much of the story was setting up early on. You know, her like watching like a kid kill her father figure, like, you know, early, like the village from like episode 2, like that whole massacre was caused because of a negligent like 17-year-old, like stuff like that is like really paying attention to like what story elements can be added to make us care more for these characters and like understand a position like this, because it's really hard to get that in storytelling with like such heavy topics. But it's also written with the perspective of Luke Ryan, was an Army Ranger, so he's experienced like, you know, very real situations like this, where like kids and people with special needs are used in war, without like even their knowledge or like a full understanding of what they're doing. And so like writing that kind of dilemma where like we kind of get these two sides of it, like really makes it interesting. But then also like crafting this from a cinematography standpoint with Sergio, and like really paying attention to like, you know, when do we do a shot like this where it's like locked on to the Titan so that it's not moving so much, and all these different things. And like even the motion capture, like how much, like if you watch, like Edith isn't doing exactly what Celise is doing, but it's all like going over like what is the choreography of this dialogue scene gonna be. And then again, like another thing in sound design, like in here you hear like the jet engines in Manfield like idling, and it's like a jet taxi sound, but like, you know, kind of building up as he regains, you know, like his systems and stuff. Like all that is going into crafting this one scene because it's so pivotal to the story. But it was really about setting something up where it's like we give you all the elements to where like this is the worst case scenario, and like that's what we're gonna show you from a writing and storytelling perspective.
You were never gonna finish out this mission, were you?
And like this whole bit, just having like no music, just leaving it up to the sound, and like here, like having the jet engines become so overwhelming and stuff. Like all of it's just part of crafting a good scene. And there was a big question for a while of like whether or not we showed the kid getting crushed. And like I'm not like averse to showing gore or anything like that, but like, you know, in this case, like we felt like it was more impactful that you didn't see it, and it's just like in your head, like you know how heavy these things are, so like you can fill in the blanks, I feel like, in a much gorier way than like we could show it. And then once again, like I had mentioned before, like we've already seen some of this environment. We already got an idea of like what this battle arena is going to be. It really does a lot to set up everything. Even when BT was like running down earlier, that's all setting this up. And even earlier foreshadowing, like a lot of this choreography is used in that beginning fight, but you know, that's a fight where Celise is like trying to beat Gila because she can kill her in a simulation without consequence. But in this situation, like she's not trying to kill Gila, but Gila is trying to kill her. So, you know, it just makes it even more dynamic because we've spent all that time setting this all up. Love this shot. This shot's incredible. And then like all this, like, you know, before now, like all the Titan sounds have been like cool. They sound good, but like here they're like old springs being bent and like, you know, metal sheets like screeching and stuff just to make it sound like, you know, unpleasant. And it's not cool sounding anymore, and it gives more weight to the scene.
Preparing for Titanfall.
I do think episode 5 has like some of the best shots in the whole series, like this shot. It just ended up looking so good from like a design perspective, and like having the sun, like being able to time it to come up just right and peek around added so much. It's also just like so crazy, like how much freedom you do get in doing something like this. Like especially because like at this point I was starting to figure out like how to do a really good animated action scene, which like this isn't perfect by any means, but like it just goes so much further than anything else we've seen like up to this point.
Whose freedom do you save? By killing kids. It's not chauvinism. It's cowardice.
And like also like another thing people don't really realize is like this as an action scene, like it's writing in like smart ways to break it up so they can have these dialogue exchanges that like continue to forward the story and tell you more about the characters. Also, like another example of like where can we add like storytelling bits. Like this is the only time you ever hear Celise like, you know, either be exhausted or like give those grunts or efforts in a fight, because like killing is something that like should come super easy to her, but she's trying not to kill this person, and like where like otherwise like it doesn't matter to her. But like even just like making that one of the additive things to the whole thing just makes it more impactful. Also, just like Cindy's performance through all this, it's just so good, so good. And then like here, like, you know, taking off the helmet is an intentional thing, because like when they're talking with the helmets on, it sounds a lot closer kind of no matter where they are, because like that's how we've established they work. So taking off the helmet and then just getting like these really hollow reflections like after Gila's death adds a lot more to it. And then once again, like just showing these really beautiful shots in this like horrific setting, like it's something we really wanted to utilize in a production like this because of what it is. And like, you know, once again, like the actors are able to get so into it because they just have to focus on their performance instead of like, you know, like being in costume. And like shooting a scene like this, like you have to shoot it in such a short amount of time because the sun doesn't stay there, you know. Whereas here there's way more control over all of that after the fact. This is another example of like when the facial animation wasn't working, like we're nowhere near Celise's face here, just because like I knew it was going to be too much cleanup, and like it wasn't going to tell a better story by being close up on her face, until it gets to like right here where I spend a little more time trying to clean it up. So there's a lot of thinking that goes into like every single shot in this. And then there are some things that we just can't control, whether it's a render issue or, you know, what have you. Unique thermite. I will explain that in tomorrow's video. Tomorrow's video kind of explains that, but it essentially comes down to I spent 2 years on this, and I asked everybody to volunteer their time to do this for free, and it's just not sustainable. I want to try some other things like in the meantime. Doesn't mean I don't want to come back to this story or this world in the future, but you know, I need to tactfully, you know, approach things for the future. And if I make a season 2, I do want it to have a little bit more funding, so at least the actors and everybody who works on it can get paid for their time. But then that gets into the weird areas of like, you know, now we're paying people to be part of an IP that we don't own. There's a lot, trust me, we think a lot about stuff. Again, this is another one of those scenes that like when we recorded it, like it just felt so right, and like seeing these like for the first time, and then Ethan doing the cinematography on it just brings so much life, especially like compared to your earlier episodes. I just love how like all this turned out.
To exterminate Jack Cooper and Solace heretics are uploading now.
And like this is like a good example of just getting like a really really good facial motion capture, even though it's not perfect, like, but the difference that it does make to show like those close-ups and those more intimate moments and set up all this like crazy. And then like all this, like we've spent so much time building up Celise's character and her relationship with Edith and Gila and all this, to have this be like the impasse, like it's one of the reasons that this can only really work as like, you know, hey, we're 2.5 hours into the show now, and this is this is where things are at. Like you need that time to build this stuff up to make it actually impactful. And then like forcing Celise into like this kind of decision, like it's all stuff we think about while writing and stuff. It really goes a long way. And then I love this transition into this next scene, which I do have like some juicy insight I want to give into this next scene. Man, like how good a metahuman looks. But all right, beautiful Unreal Engine environments, right? Looks amazing. Eric Oliveira did the cinematography on this scene as well. But one thing that we kind of brainstormed, because he wanted to have more of this artistic approach to showing these environments to help set up and tell this part of the story. And because we know Nadim has passed away, and we've just seen Gila pass away, how we did this scene was essentially you never see somebody speaking. Like the camera's never on them when they're speaking. They're either out of focus or out of, you know, framed out, just to really emphasize the fact that like these characters are no longer with us, and like we're just getting a glimpse into this moment, like, but we can't actually be a part of it because they are now passed on. And just it came together so well, especially just like the performance of Lila and Chris in this scene. They just did a fantastic job, you know, bringing this all back, because that's like, you know, in some of the testing of different episodes and like script reads and stuff, like people wanted something more from these two characters just because it's left on such a sour note. And then this kind of gives it like a bittersweet ending of like somebody was really trying to guide Gila in the right direction, and it just didn't happen in the end, which is unfortunate, but like it's just the reality of things. But it just turned into such a good scene.
I wish we could just come home with you. To Angel City.
Perhaps one day this war will be over and both our people will be at peace.
Just the way like the motion capture turned out for this, with like the hand on her back and everything, just all around made for such a good scene. But all right, we're getting ready to head into the final episode 6. Which, fun fact, when this came out, the VFX for episode 6 were only about 70% done. I was working on episode 6 until 30 minutes before it came out. And I had to review it in double speed to double check it all before it launched. It was crazy. But it all came out on time. We were able to celebrate 10 years of Titanfall, release in the release date that we wanted to. So, super great all around. But yeah, I did not realize that this episode was going to be an hour long until like way too late. And then I was like, oh my goodness, this is incredibly long. But I think is a fantastic ending to the series. I'm glad it started with such a short cold open. Which, fun fact, and I wish I would have learned this sooner, but I'll definitely be using it in the future. So like here and a few places throughout episode 6, to make like some of the unsettling sounds, it's a didgeridoo. It's an instrument from Australia. And if you slow it down to like 20%, it just makes these really unsettling growls that I used a lot in episode 6. All right. So this next scene, this is also just another fantastic example of just like letting the actors do their thing, letting them act. And like what Cindy and Justin did with this scene is just incredible. But when I originally wrote it, I thought it was going to be like 3 minutes long, which was just like mainly a miscalculation on my part. But it's about 8 minutes, and they just do an amazing job, like with their vocal performances, like the candor between the characters. And just like it works so well because like, you know, when writing, like we can try to dial it in as close as possible, but like we really need to feel and understand like the motivations of these characters and everything, right? And so like through this, you know, we can really start to feel that. And like when Celise kind of comes to terms with everything, like you feel it. And Cindy does a fantastic job showing that. And like, you know, Justin's performance as Jack truly like shows it off in a way that just makes you believe it, which I think was the most important thing. But once again, this is like, you know, most of this facial animation is being done largely by hand. There's a little bit of input from, you know, how we were doing facial mocap before, but I just got way better at doing it by hand. So now that MetaHuman Animator's out, like taking that and adding it to a performance like this, just tweaking it by hand, will go a long, long ways. And also just like finding ways to do like cinematography on a scene like this, where it's like, you know, you're not just cutting between like the same 2 or 3 cameras, like really paying attention to like what's the best for the moment from a cinematography standpoint. And also just paying attention to like, we've shown like here's like a shot of the fire, but then like, you know, it's just setting up that it's there so that the light can do the job 90% of the time. But generally speaking, like, you know, you're not like, there are no effects happening with with the fire, it's just the light kind of flickering. But like when you add the sound design and everything, like you're convinced the fire is there the whole time. But like once again, none of this is real. I think another thing, like just from the actors' perspectives, like Justin has he has a very good understanding of Titanfall 2 as a game, but like you really believe like his performance and his perspective of like where he's from and why he's on this side and everything. And then same thing with Celeste, like you feel like the conflict that she has like, about turning against everything that she knows and like kind of going into the self-destructive mode for a bit of like, you know, is there an easy out for her, you know, by like shaming herself and like getting Jack to leave her behind or something, just so she doesn't have to live with, you know, this guilt. But then like it's just a conversation that coaxes in the right direction and really has you convinced by the end. I think in the script, like when it goes into the next scene with the two of them, like it ends with it being like, you know, like she looks at Jack, someone who used to be her enemy, but now she might even think of as a friend, like right before he sacrifices himself. Which everybody thinks that he fought Edith in a 101, but he doesn't. He's internally bleeding. He's internally and externally bleeding. He's a ticking time bomb. And then there's stuff like this, like just intentionally showing Cindy's reaction to Justin's performance and just holding on this camera. But yeah, like all the subtleties, like there, like pulling up her cheek and everything, like that's all stuff that I'm doing by hand just to sell that performance a little bit more. I learned so much about facial animation through doing this project. So, and now having better tools for the next one, it's gonna go a long ways. Oh, also another reference to the game, the franchise, whatever you might want to say. The cinematic trailer that Blur Studio did. There's like a scene with like Jack Cooper and BT like around a fireplace, and Jack Cooper is leaning against the 40mm cannon, and that's what's being referenced here. That's what he's up against is BT's 40mm. So paying attention to all sorts of details, and even Jack's character model. Like it's a combination of what Jack looks like in the game, but also what he looks like in that cinematic trailer, and just trying to pay attention to all those things. And then this shot right here, Sergio did the cinematography in the next scene. But like this was his idea to have it like pan down into Pyre's scene. Which like usually those shots don't tend to work in a lot of films, but like I'm so glad it did here. And once again, we had lost all the Unreal projects. So I couldn't get the 3D data from scenes like this, or like the whole battle scene at the end. So like everything, like this screen and everything had to be tracked in there by hand, and it was awful. But I made it work in the end. But yeah, everything had to be tracked by hand for episode 5 and episode 6. And once again, that's another reason we had to stay on that diner scene for so long. Because that comes back, and it's brought up in episode 1. We stay on it for a long time in episode 3, and now it's here in episode 6. Just little storytelling beats. Alright, so this scene, once again, music written by Tom Duffy. When we were actually doing a script read through, we read through this scene, and he was like, please let me compose for this scene. Like, I can see it in my head. And so like 10 months later, I was like, all right, I got like a draft of the scene, time to get into it. So he made a version of this scene, and he did a fantastic job composing the music for it. But like, again, like a scene like this is like, this was done in like July or August, so he would have time to work on the music and stuff. But like other scenes, like the episode 4, that whole fight scene thing, like that wasn't ready for him to start composing until like December, like late December. So all this is just like coordinating so many things going on at the same time. But, and then, once again, we have to make this scene work and tell it in a little bit of a different way. And kind of like, BT got to sacrifice himself in like a bombastic way in episode 2. So like the juxtaposition of that is like having Jack Cooper make this much quieter sacrifice for like the entirety of, this planet to get all these people off. Like him having this this quiet exit just is a storytelling parallel to the game, and really thinking about like how that would all work. And then like from this point, like we don't see Celise again in this scene, because now it is about Jack and BT. Also, that goodbye Jack, that's a hidden reference deep in the game files of Titanfall 2. That's what BT originally said when that scene ends, the end of Titanfall 2, when he says trust me before he throws the originally said goodbye Jack. So that's what we made the line in this.
Just a few more weeks to go before all the stabilizers are in place. We cannot afford any more incidents, Myers. Are you prepared to take necessary action? The traitor will be brought to justice, sir. See to it.
And once again, we're doing it all over again. This scene, there's a lot of, it's a conversation piece, lots of exposition, moves the story along. But we're spending all this time walking across this, I think in the script we called it No Man's Land, because we wanted to feel like very World War One, because that's like a huge thing in Titanfall. Titanfall 2 culture is like, the whole like the Titanfall or the World War One Titans and pilots, like fan art and stuff. So like we wanted to kind of make like a No Man's Land situation, but spending all this time showing how long it takes for him to walk across this landscape sets up the entire fight scene for the end. So again, it's dropping those little things that, you might not notice beforehand, but like when you when you go back and watch it, you're like, oh, like that is like definitely being set up here, just to show how long it takes for a Titan to walk across, but they're having like a meaningful conversation at the same time.
Yeah, not quite.
And then this whole scene, I am very happy with how this turned out, because I realized, like, when like it was already written and performed and everything, I was like, wait, I've never filmed a scene with like this many characters having all this dialogue, and now I'm doing it in a digital format, and like, once again, this is all, people on Discord having this conversation, and then it's me in one motion capture suit doing every single character over and over and over again. And for a scene that's as long as this, it can be taxing, but I'm very happy with how it turned out.
She's the Iron Fleet pilot Jack was after.
See, Juliet's costume is going a little out of whack. That was before I discovered the hacks for better real-time rendering. Also, it's like hard for me to like comment on episode 6 specifically, because I was working on it all up until the end. So like I've only watched it through like all the way once, because it is such a long episode, and I've been like super busy since it's come out. But like when I watch it, I'm like, man, like just seeing it come together, like I mean, like part of me just sits here and is like, oh wow. Even, like once again, even though there is jank, like the fact that any of this works at all is crazy to me. Also, for anybody who's watching this late into the stream or comes back later to rewatch, B-More mentions how he's part of the Apex Predators, and on his shoulder pads it does say, and you can see it if you like pause it in certain places, it says "I am better" on it, which is like kind of a diss to Blisk, and that's why he has Blisk's helmet. Again, another one of those like little things that we hid in and amongst, little Easter eggs within New Frontiers. Also, like a scene like this, it has a lot going on with the characters, like the facial animation, like had its own separate thing. The body animation had its own separate thing, but then all the characters in the background, like, most of them are looping animations, but, setting them in such a place where it's like, I kind of set them all up, and then I did the camera animation, and then I was like, okay, where can you actually see these characters, and moving them into positions where you actually see movement in the background that gives everything a little bit more life. Also, this is another example of like, writing. When I was working through this with Luke Ryan, all this was like part of one scene, and he was like, we really need to break this up. It's too much standing around talking. We need to break it up with something. And this ended up being what breaks it up, just having like, you know, stuff fall over, and then they're all, you know, you get a little bit of them. You can see Sad Marvin in the background from the Titanfall 2 campaign. And then we pick back up into the conversation, which gives a little bit more of a break, and like Celeste maybe has had a little bit of time to, you know, think about how she might answer the question, just to be thrown off again. And then the scene that got the fans. But again, this was revealed early in that original concept trailer. You know, it shows the red helmet at the end of that, because I always knew that I wanted to do something, but I wasn't sure what, like in the concept trailer. But like then this is like that nod back to it, where the helmet flashes red at the end of the concept trailer. This is like, you know, kind of that callback. But again, just like building like this beautiful set just for this one scene, and everything just goes away. Once again, dude, that water in Unreal Engine looks, that with ultra dynamic sky, can't beat it. And Easy Fog, all fantastic plugins. Something I want to point out here in just a second. There's like these shots with like Pyres walking up, and in the trailer that came out in October of 2023, like it was like the background was Pyre standing in front of Typhon, and this time, you know, it's a little bit like it's in front of Malkaya instead. But you know, that was like, we needed to build more intrigue for that trailer, and here it's more about the storytelling of where that is. So this shot right here was originally Typhon in that trailer, but in the final it's in front of Malkaya. Also, that photo, like that's all you see of it right there, that little pan up. But just adding, oh, I guess you see it right there too. But like just the detail of like going in and creating a photo that they would have taken together at some point, you know, like adds that much more. Also, where Tegan is right now, that's me standing on two kitchen chairs because their legs needed to dangle over the edge here. And so it's standing on two kitchen chairs and then actually jumping down. It was super sketchy to record, but like ended up looking really good. Also just like trying to pay attention to things, like because Tegan is supposed to be so small. So like, you know, like Celeste is always going to be looking a little bit down, and Tegan's always going to be looking a little bit up, and, you know, trying to get their eye lines fixed after the fact and everything. Like it's all stuff that is being thought about that just, you know, takes that time and attention. And even like this whole like set and everything, and paying attention to little things. you know, it all builds around the scene, and I feel like at this point, like, you know, the facial animation isn't perfect still, but like I've gotten way better compared to episode 1, where it was like just like mouths moving up and down. It looked like somebody like puppeteering. Whereas at this point, like, I've gotten much better at doing it by hand and cleaning it all up, so that like this scene like just works really well. And even paid attention. I'm sorry. It's been a long stream. I also worked today. But like Rodrigo did some of the cinematography on this scene, and like just setting up little lights to catch more light in their eyes to give it more, like there are tiny little spotlights that only exist to reflect in their eyes, just to give it more life. All sorts of tiny details to convince you that this isn't just, you know, like nothing. It's none of this exists. None of it's real. The only thing that's real is the voices of the actors. Everything else is an illusion, and that's crazy. Also, this is my friend Mackenzie, who voices Tegan. She fixes diesel trucks for a living on a naval base. But like, even she was able to get involved in a project like this, so super cool that just like anything like this can be pulled off now over Discord with nobody in the same room.
Solis Arethusa. The recompense for your crimes is death.
Also, like little things like that, like, you know, there's a reason the shot lingers on the inside of her cockpit, because that's eventually how she gets taken down in a few minutes. But showing it off there, like, it's just little things to trigger in your brain from a storytelling perspective. Oh, and also, if you look earlier in the show, Edith's eye is red throughout the whole thing, but most of her other lights are white, and it's only after she's been taken full control by the IMC that all the lights are red. So it's a little itty bitty detail that makes her appear more menacing, on top of Sherry just doing a fantastic job voicing Edith and making her sound like she approached most of the series with her having a motherly tone, and then just stripped that away for all of this, and it just made it work so much more. Again, just little details and collaboration coming together to make it better. Little reference to the cinematic trailer. I guess it's also like the beginning of Titanfall 2, like the video that plays in the beginning. But again, like coordinating something like this just takes so much. And then like this right here, I'll let it play out. But like that right there, when I was doing the sound design for it, I was like, what? Like, how can you make it sound like Titan is coughing? You know? Like it's on its last life, and it just sounds beat up. And once again, like using some of those metal sheets and old springs and stuff for different sound effects here just really helps make it sound more dire and less like cool. Because like from here on out, like most of it sounds cool except for when Tegan's Titan goes down. Also, for the OGs, this is the same music that's in the concept trailer. I felt it was important to bring it back. And there we go. Once again, we're bringing back the Graph Star. It was all set up for a reason. Hello, might be a little bit late, but still hi. What's going on, Jesus Christ? Welcome to the stream. We're doing the director's commentary for New Frontiers, final send-off for the project before we jump into the new stuff. Come tomorrow. Got new stuff coming to be announced. But working through the rest of episode 6, we're in the last 30 minutes, so pull up a chair, come hang out. Glad to have you here. Also, I need to get used to looking at the camera up here. I'm so used to the chat and the camera being kind of next to each other, which maybe might be smart for future things. But yeah, so like shots like this, like I'm really happy with how that shot turned out. There's so many shots that I wanted to have like more of a fog and smoke in, but like I just had to cut so many shots out of VFX by the end here because there are so many VFX in this shot, in this like final 30 minutes.
Your damage leg will put us at a disadvantage.
This is also like super important to me, like writing like two intelligent perspectives and not like, oh, I'm smarter than the robot. You know, like I didn't want it to be like something stupid like that, but like BT proposes like what seems like the best idea, and then Celise is using her knowledge of the IMC of like how can we turn them against themselves, and like that's what gives her a slightly more tactical advantage in coming up with a plan. And then BT comes into it being like, oh, well, let's make that even better by giving you tons of explosives. Also, like, this is like another one of those scenes, like I had mentioned before, like there's supposed to be like way more fog in all this, like it's supposed to be more dense, just ran out of time. But you know, like there were elements of this that just like were written one way, but then like motion capture either ran out of time or animation ran out of time. We were finding ways to compromise it. I'm really happy with how this stunt turned out. That was really hard to get right for motion capture. That little spin with the jump jets, because jump jets don't exist in real life, and certainly not when you're recording motion capture.
Do it, BT.
But yeah, the fog and everything just in Unreal, like this, like the last 30 minutes of this whole thing, like the Unreal project, I ended up having to like make a secondary one where I just deleted a bunch of stuff of this same map, but like it just did not want to render properly, so I ended up having to make quite a few compromises on it. But like a lot of what's happening in here, this is like what I wanted a lot of the scene to look like. Not as dense, but similar feeling.
Don't celebrate yet.
Hey, thanks, Jesus Christ. I'm so glad that you enjoyed the show, and hopefully you'll be joining us tomorrow for the updates on what's happening with the channel and get a little insight to new projects that are coming in. So thank you for hopping on the stream for the bit that you did, and we'll see you tomorrow. It's gonna be good. Davis and Draws finally getting there.
All ready for chills,
The
grills,
little
and grills?
cameo.
Must you say that every time, Davis? Oh, sure do.
And again, this is what made like when we added those little end credit scenes, like it just made this moment work so much more. Because like this whole time they've been talking about how much they want to be in the show, to where now it's like they actually get to be in it.
And one more thing.
Just made the whole project
Really, just throw that. Don't worry.
even more neat, and it's already set up their rapport.
Nuclear battery. Cooked it up myself. Put it in the battery core of an enemy Titan for some extra spice. Just make sure you ride the pilot's ejection seat up, or you'll be toast. Encouraging, Davis. Stay in line, team. Your Titans will be ready shortly.
Couldn't agree more. Team, stay back until the blast dissipates. It'll make a sizable dent.
Sounds good. We'll get in close and call in our Titans on the enemy.
Sounds perfect.
Also, this is another example of just like I studied like the fastball scenes so many times to see like how BT moved and stuff.
Heard, BT.
I'm also super proud of that line. The "Have a safe flight" line. I thought it was pretty good. Also, this whole bit, like by this time, this is when I was starting to realize just how long episode 6 was potentially going to run. And so this part did end up getting rushed a little bit. But like I do like some of the VFX, like that shot right there with like the smoke trailing up behind them. That ended up looking good. All this stuff turned out okay. Obviously it's like hard to like figure out like what it's gonna look like in your head compared to final screen, but you know, it is what it is. But there was also like, because once again, like there was supposed to be a lot more smoke in the screen from all those explosions, but we were very limited on just like, you know, because at this point I was probably doing these. I did this VFX shot on the Thursday before episode 6 came out. So when episode 4 was releasing, I did that VFX shot, and I was doing all these just non-stop until 10 p.m. on Saturday, like 10:30 p.m. on Saturday. And then I did the color grading Sunday morning, and the export Sunday afternoon, and watched it in double speed 30 minutes before it came out. I was like, yep, it's good. Upload it, send it. But there's also just like so much, and like every time it cuts, it's a new VFX shot and everything. This shot, I love the way the animation turned out, just kind of showing the teamwork and high efficiency. And then once again, like writing in like things specifically, like Juliet getting a battery to give to BT because we've already damaged him. So how do we get him in better repair? You know, all that stuff is what's thought about in writing ever before it becomes like an action scene. And then getting Juliet like out of the battle so there can be like kind of this whole sub-action plot going on. That poor grunt. He just was trying to feed his family.
Any word on our Titans? They're loading up now. You guys still
So this whole sequence, kind of what we did when the Titans like land, like there was little things done here to, you know, make it cool, you know. Like I love that shot, Juliet running and the Monarch falling behind her. But so like all this, we did like just did a ton of rehearsing for each Titan on like how it would move and feel. And my brother-in-law did all the motion capture for the Titans here. But then it was just like we did this whole sequence and it goes for about like a minute, 45 seconds to a minute of like these different animations of them advancing forward and doing all this. That way we could repeat animations in the backgrounds of other stuff. And I really focused heavily on cleaning up that 45 seconds of animation so that it could be used in the background, kind of in different looping points. But the Scorch turned out so good that like I needed to show more of that. Also, I knew like people were going to be just wanting to see Scorch setting stuff on fire. So yeah, kind of have to. Also, all the little stickers. The sticker on the Scorch says war crimes on it. I don't know if anybody's caught that yet. Yeah, I also love the way that the fire turned out. Huge shout out to ActionVFX for getting us everything we needed to make the effects in this show possible. Awesome, awesome company. Papa Scorch moment is right. Then, of course, the Danger Toaster. I do need to get a Danger Toaster sticker. Smack it up on my laptop. And once again, all these effects, those are all tracked in 100% by hand, just going frame by frame. Tough, but it did end up looking good in the end. And then this bit in here, I want to talk a little bit about the whole ion thing. So, first of all, Wilhelm scream. Sounds fantastic. But this whole bit, I had written and I had in my head since the beginning. And when they did it in Apex, like the ion jumping up and having the laser core because they were doing like that anime style video, I was like, that's pretty great that like we both had the same idea. I remember like when I was talking about how I wanted that guy to die, I was like, I want him to pop like a zit. And once again, it goes back to like that whole like gore question. It's like, yes, in like the right moment, definitely want to show it, but like earlier when it was like with the kid and stuff, leaving it up to your imagination made it more effective. And then like all the design that we're setting up with like now the harvester being turned on and being a light source. Also with, if you listen, once again, like turn the sound design up real loud, the harvester always has like kind of a thumping sound, bass tone behind it, but it also has an audio illusion called a rising shepherd that plays up until Celeste gets shot at the end, and then that rising shepherd cuts out. It's over a good 15 minutes. It's just in the background, like kind of, you know, deep in your eardrums, building the anxiety around these sets of scenes. Also, mechs fighting with forklifts. And once again, like something like that animation right there of the gun popping out, like, because it is supposed to be like a little bit of a comedic moment. It's a callback. I don't know if you guys have ever seen in Toy Story 2, in the very opening, there's a scene like that, because it's like Buzz in like the video game that like Rex is playing at the very beginning, and that's how Toy Story 2 opens. It's a reference to that, but so like giving like the gun like, you know, a little bit more of this animated and like having it land and like having kind of these more clunky sound effects that like kind of sets it up as a comedic moment, and then the tone falling with like, you know, the legs, like that's direct reference to Toy Story 2, but like giving it a more playful moment to be like, you know, a little bit of a comedic beat. It doesn't have to be hilarious to be a comedic beat, but like, you know, it still makes it entertaining.
We need to get that power stuff to the battleground.
Heavy time to load up. We can drop it off. We don't keep the broken ones anyways.
And once again, that whole like Juliet's whole side thing is just to set up this ending bit right here and give them a place to land. Like, it's all just, again, set up in the writing perspective of it.
Concentrate power on that harvester.
And man, there's so many things that I wish I could go in and fix, but like, I'm kind of glad that I can't. I'm glad that it's out and that I can do the next thing even better. But if you even look here, like at this point, if you look at like the background and like, especially in the grass, like Unreal Engine wouldn't even render those textures anymore. It rendered all the other textures just fine. But like if you look at the grass, the mountain in the background, like it just stopped rendering those textures, but it almost gave this more stylized look that I really dug. I also remember just like these two bigger music tracks towards the end, like this one and the one that plays in the credits. Like I just remember the first time I heard them and like knowing they had a place somewhere and like finding that place so long ago and like now seeing it in the final thing. That's so crazy. This is a writing bit from Nathan Snyder, because like originally like Solis just told BT what to do, but like he was like that it wouldn't work that way. So like establishing early on that like, you know, you could exchange the data chips to override like what the Titan would do. Like again, it's all little things that are set up. Also here she's holding the gun and the sword because this was a re-render of a scene, because like it was poorly rendered in a different shot. All sorts of little things that are you know, you gotta just figure out like when do you compromise that, when do you compromise the fact that she was holding her sword in her gun when she wasn't supposed to. But I don't even think I noticed that one until after it was already out. Love this shot. That's my favorite shot of the whole show. Then we cut to the widescreen bars. I feel like sometimes movies just do that just because, and like I was really debating whether or not I did it here, but kind of felt like it was earned after everything and just the feeling of this scene. And once again, like this is all derived from that earlier scene with Beam of like just showing these characters in black and white, but just the entire design of it. And then bam, right there, we're right back to the widescreen. Or the full screen, I'm sorry. And once again, at like full volume, you feel like the whole weight of like the harvester in the background and everything. And then Chandler did the cinematography for this bit. It just looks so good. I love just the design of like everything being lit in split lighting. But then also like, you know, we set up Pyre's pilot armor to have an illuminated helmet just for this scene, but we had to show it earlier on in the story.
You turned on me. You turned on the core giant. You turned on Kila. Was any of this real?
I also love how conflicted audience members were about this scene. And like it does exactly what it's supposed to. Like this is supposed to be like somebody has to get the short end of the stick in the story, and it's Pyres in this case. And like as much as you would want him to have a better ending, like it can't all be wishy-washy.
At the end of this war, at the end of ourselves,
I love Roger's performance for this.
of us,
He just does such an amazing job. And the cinematography, like Chandler's choice to just like stay on him for this whole performance right there was just like so good. So good.
take nothing from this cursed land.
And then this next song here, this little audio bit. Like I remember when I heard it and knew that it was like the ending music. I wish I had done something different for her laying there, but it is what it is. The animation of her laying there looks a little wonky, but all this, like from here, I just love the way that it turned out. It's like exactly what I saw in my head. It just turned out so good. Just the fact that you can tell a story like this just still amazes me. Like this was all done on a computer. Nobody was ever in the same room. It's just crazy. That might be like my top-notch animation work. It's at the very end. I remember like doing like this ending stuff. And I was like, there it is. Like, I feel like I've finally got a decent handle on this. Like, not that like I'm a professional by any means, but a decent enough handle on it. And I was like, but it's at right there at the very end. Because I feel like I found it. And then just getting this shot, like, just making that work. This would be such a hard shot in real life, and just having the control we had to make it happen. Just wow. Here we are at the end with the stylized credits. These were all done a week before release. So I did these, yeah. So like we released New Frontiers on the 11th, and I did these the Thursday before that. So we were literally working down to the wire on this show. I'm really glad we were able to get it out for the 10th anniversary, and now we can work on even more great things. Just super duper exciting. But watch the credits on this one, because we got the end credit scene. So we'll get to that. Sorry, I'm like lost in the sauce right now. It's a lot when you spend 2 years of your life working on something. Alright, end credit scene. So most of this is done 100% in Unreal Engine. So all these weather effects and stuff. There are a couple of them, like there's one shot specifically that had to be recreated to look like the same. This shot right here. But otherwise it's being done 100% in Unreal. And like stuff like this, like how do you not give away that it's Blisk immediately, and a lot of that was changing his like silhouette profile by giving him the backpack, by putting like the giant sniper rifle on him, by bulking out his waist, by giving him a gas mask. Like all that stuff played into making him less recognizable to fans to begin with. But then also having it being set up recently enough to, you know, start to make sense for new viewers. And once again, like I feel like this is some of the better animation in the entire project, but it's because by this point I was getting like a good handle on animation and all that. And this was a much shorter scene than most of the scenes in the show. And this was an example of like, I did that shot at like 10:40 p.m. the night before the show came out. But all right, 6 episodes, made it all the way through. Thank you guys for watching and being a part. New Frontiers was a fantastic experience to create. Once again, I never could have expected what happened with YouTube and all that to take off the way that it did, but it has, and it's been an incredible journey. And tomorrow we're going to be announcing the next phase of what we're doing with Plot Coalition, and we have tons of exciting stuff in the works. And we're already working on our next project pretty in depth, so stay tuned for that. That video comes out tomorrow. Also, if you want to become a YouTube member, that's going to be the best way to support the channel. So you can look into that, as well as joining the Plot Coalition Discord, which also goes live with tomorrow's video. So all that, thank you for being here, being a part of it, and watching through this director's commentary of Titanfall New Frontiers. It has been fantastic. This is kind of my farewell to New Frontiers. But it's in a good way, because from here we're going to be able to do even more things and hopefully revisit Titanfall down the line. So stay tuned tomorrow. New stuff is coming. And yeah, become a member. Fun stuff. All right, I'll let you listen to the music one more time. I'm signing off. Thank you for joining.